Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ichronic here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 Warlock Exotics in Destiny 2 Season of the Deep. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video which still gives you your mod recommendations and PvE and PvP ranks for all the different Warlock Exotics in the game, which can still be found at my Discord server, link in the description down below, on the channel #spreadsheetsdoc. And truly, these spreadsheets and these videos and my YouTube channel would not be possible without my patrons on Patreon. And look, there's cute animals on screen, don't click forward just yet. And I mean it when I say it. The patrons are the reason why I keep doing this spreadsheet. And I may have to stop doing these spreadsheets soon. May have to stop doing my YouTube channel altogether. So please, sooner rather than later, check out the Patreon, because if 0.1% of you gave me $10 a month, I'd be able to make minimum wage. And I honestly love making these spreadsheets, and I love this game, and I want to do that. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the spreadsheet. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. Dark theme, color-coded, recommendations, PvE and PvP rankings for all the different Warlock Exotics in the game, again, as well as previous season stuff. If you want to take out the Super Exotics, or you want to take out the Hunter ones, it's all there on that spreadsheet. And in this video, we'll only be going over the top 10, but obviously there are a lot of other exotics that are still really fun to use, and even very good, but obviously in a top 10, I can only pick 10. And before I get into the top 10, I just wanted to talk about the elephant in the room, which is obviously Starfire Protocol. It used to be the literal solution to everything in PvE, literally boss damage, crowd control, enemy slaying, staying alive, and it obviously was on Solar, which is Solar 3.0 is really good, and Well of Radiance the best super in the game. Starfire Protocol now is just kind of average. It used to be where you get 20% of your grenade back on any empowered weapon damage from an Empowering Rift or a Well, and now it's like 2.5%. Which is not terrible, but obviously nowhere near as crazy as it was before. On top of that, any empowered weapon kills, mean you have to use an Empowering Rift, gives you 20% of your grenade back. So it's not even the grenade kills that give you your grenade back. Your grenade kills obviously give you your Empowering Rift back, but in my opinion, it's not worth using an Empowering Rift, and just makes me want to use a Healing Rift. Which was the gamble before, was that it was actually worth using Empowering Rift just because this was so goddamn amazing. But hey, look on the bright side. It finally has an ornament this season. Moving on, let's go ahead and get started. Up first at number 10, we have the Aeon Soul. And the same as any of the Aeon Exotics, this is chosen in PvE as a default for Grandmaster Nightfalls because you can spawn heavy ammo and special ammo on champions and major. And the best part is, those particular benefits, you don't need to have Aeon on your full team to get them. Although there are other benefits for more Aeons on your team, the ability to spawn in heavy ammo for your team without them having Aeons is an incredible option. TLDR, it is a great default option to spawn heavy ammo for your team in a Grandmaster Nightfall. And any of the Aeons across all the classes will be the same thing. Following that at number 9, we have the exotic known as Rain of Fire. TLDR, this is going to be the Fusion Rifle Exotic. If you've never heard of it, air dodge reloads all of your weapons and improves the airborne effectiveness of fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles, on top of also giving you a base level increase to airborne effectiveness of all of those as well. And more importantly, you'll also get Radiant whenever you get a kill with fusion rifles, which if you didn't know, Vex Mythic class counts as a fusion rifle, which also has a built-in perk that gives it more damage on top of its linear fusion rifle shots, which will also count for all of this stuff, proccing Radiant, etc., which will pretty significantly help your time to kill with Vex Mythic class, which is an incredibly good option still for PvP. And although you probably won't see this exotic that often, it is a very niche exotic, and it is still a great option for fusion rifles, and may even still be a decent option for things like Arbalist or regular fusion rifles. Do not underestimate the ability of getting Radiant just from a kill. Following that at number 8, we have the Eye of Another World. One of the most basic exotics in the game, literally came from the Red Wars, and it essentially just increases the regeneration speed of your grenade, your melee, and your rift abilities, while also highlighting enemies with low health. Highlighting is literally just a silhouette which does not see through walls. Essentially, if you have an ability-based build and you want a fast regeneration on all of your abilities, you don't have maxed out tier 10 stats, this exotic just solves a lot of those problems across any of your subclasses. And although it's not the best PvP exotic in the game, it is a good default, it is very easy to use and understand, and it works well with abilities which are still very strong. Following that at number 7, we have the Stag, which gained popularity a little over a year ago when it got buffed and changed to make it so your rifts provide damage resistance, which I think is a ×2 resistance, if I remember correctly, to any of your allied guardians within it, and you get rift energy whenever you get critically wounded, which is obviously going to be happening all the the time. On top of also, when you die, you create a rift on your corpse, making you an ideal target to be revived, especially if it is a damage-resisting healing rift, making Trials of Osiris reviving a lot easier. Again, I want to highlight yet again, damage resistance plus healing on all of your teammates in a single spot is a very powerful option, and we often see it with the Arc Soul turrets on your shoulder on Arc, making it one of the better options for Arc, but still can be used on any of the subclasses. And to be honest, it's not bad in PvE as well. Having damage resistance on your rifts that you get very frequently, it's not a bad thing to have, although it probably won't kill your enemies. Pulling that at number 6, we have the Osmiomancy Gloves, which is probably one of the best overall exotics in the game because it's great for PvE and PvP, both with an 8 out of 10 ranking. If you've never heard of it, you have an additional Cold Snap Grenade, which is great for overflow charging, and you recharge it quicker on direct impact. So you get around 50% of your grenade back whenever the little Cold Snap trails hit an enemy, and anytime you also bonk an enemy. So if you bonk an enemy, drops to the floor, and that hits them, you get a full grenade back, which again, you have 2 of. And any of the seekers spawned from your Cold Snap grenades travel further and target more aggressively. And furthermore, this counts for any of the Cold Snap trails, which also includes that one aspect or fragment that you shatter and create more Cold Snap trails, which I think also includes conditional finality. You freeze the target, it shatters, and it creates those little Cold Snap trails. In PvP, it should be obvious. You're freezing a lot of enemies, allowing you to shoot at them with no problem at all, creating a lot of trails that can lock down a lot of enemies while it being in a good subclass with that great freezy melee as well. In PvE, it's great crowd control. You can basically lock down a whole room as long as you have the damage output from things like Wither Horde, Osteo Striger, or something that does a lot of damage. Or just as part of a team, locking down enemies in the entire room is really effective. TLDR, you freeze everybody in the room, you get all your grenade energy back, and if you're using stasis, this is an exotic for you. One downside is that it is from the Legend Lost sectors, which may be difficult for a lot of people. Although Legend is a lot easier than it ever has been. Following that at number 5, probably the fan favorite, we have the Sun Bracers, which I just want to say first and foremost that again, the last season we did this sheet was Season of the Seraph, and since then we now have the Solar Grenade Cure Fragment, which obviously helps Sunbracers pretty significantly. That build allowing it to be a lot more aggressive. And if you've never heard of this exotic, first of all, your solar grenades have increased duration, specifically the grenade that's called Solar Grenade, and any solar melee kills grant unlimited solar grenade energy for a brief period of time, allowing you to throw like 5 or 6 solar grenades in a row without having to stop. And the general strategy is you consume your solar grenade, you go and get a charged solar melee kill, and throwing a bunch of different grenades while flying through the air with heat rises allows you to get your melee back, which you then repeat again, getting that melee kill, throwing a ton of those grenades, and your heat rises timer keeps increasing as you're getting those kills from the air, on top of also giving you melee energy back. The obvious limitation from this is that you are required to get a charged melee kill. If you don't get the kill with that, you can't start the cycle, which in the higher level play, Incinerator Snap, which is the more popular option for most things, will not reach out to much range. With that, I also recommend that you take a close look at your mods, because a lot of these mods will make a pretty big difference. And I'm not just talking about Ashes to Acid, you get more super energy from those grenade kills. I'm talking about things that will give you your melee back, like Invigoration. Anytime you pick up an orb, you actually get more of your melee energy back, making it a lot more consistent, which you should be creating tons of orb with firepower on your gloves, which any grenade kill should create an orb. And I also recommend an incandescent primary weapon, like for example Mida Mini Tool, which with solar siphons creates more orbs, and any enemies that are scorched nearby will give you more melee energy back with that one fragment. Doing all of these things, cycling in on each other, having the healing grenades, getting more melee energy, doing a ton of orbs, which give you lots of super, which is the best super in the game. Also recommending Phoenix Dive, which can be used more often to give you more melee energy, healing, etc., will allow you to get the cycle a lot easier. And obviously this was a very, in a nutshell thing, I recommend looking at an official build that somebody else has made. But if you get all that done, you can get a lot of damage with a lot of grenades, which actually do pretty good boss damage as well. Following that at number 4, we have the Ophidian Aspects, which did get nerfed this season to no longer have that extra meter of melee range. That being said, weapons ready and reload very quickly, having really good handling, also not needing to use those points on your gloves is still extremely useful, with things like the Messenger having a bit of a poor handling being a high impact weapon. This particular exotic solves every problem with it, on top of a lot of other weapons that have poor handling as well. And you'll see this pattern through a lot of other exotics. Things like Dragon Shadow for the Hunter is a 9 out of 10 in PvP in my opinion. And in general, the pattern is if something can make you move faster or use your weapons faster, it is amazing for PvP. Following that at number 3, we have the Rarities Brow. Again, another exotic that I think is highly underrated, probably because it feels a little bit convoluted. So let me explain it for you. Weapon final blows with a damage type matching your subclass give you death throw. So if you're on a solar subclass, use a solar weapon. Death throws is a buff that can stack up to 5 in the left. And the death throws provide grenade damage bonus and grant you grenade energy. I think it's 20% damage bonus per stack up to 100% more damage, and give you a bit of grenade energy back, which allows you to get your grenade more often. And whenever you have death throws and you throw a grenade, nearby allies gain greatly increased grenade regeneration for a short time. Keep in mind, greatly increased regeneration is significant. Those allies will get their grenades very quickly. And if they're also using Rarities Brow, using their grenades more often with death throws, you're going to be giving each other grenades like crazy. Essentially, this exotic allows you to use your weapon kill, which is still a kill requirement, but a simple kill to have, will give you more damage in grenades and more grenades quickly and help your team as well. And it is a universal item that can be used across any subclass. And I have used it for things like Strand, even though the grenade doesn't do a lot of damage. Before I had a lot of Strand exotics, or we had a lot of Strand exotics, it is a good default. And frankly, it can be used in solar with the double exploding fusion grenades, which can do up to double the damage now with this exotic. Following that at number 2, we have the Transversive Steps, and in my opinion, the best PvP exotics for the Warlock. And all it does is increase your sprint speed, and after a short time of sprinting, automatically reload the equipped weapon, both of which are extremely useful in the Crucible. And as a little side note, something that you have to keep in mind is something like the mobility stat increases not only your sprint speed, but also your jump height. And Warlocks don't want jump height because they want to return to the floor as soon as possible to use their burst glide again. With Transversive Steps, you get an increase to your sprint speed without your jump height, which makes it even better than before. And again, a default option that can be used across any subclass that you want. As long as your weapons don't suffer from handling things, I recommend this exotic over Ophidian Aspects a lot of the time. And I say this pretty much every time. All of these speed, mobility exotics, Stompies, Dune Marchers, Transversives in a shooter game is very useful. Running away from your enemy, avoiding shots more easily, and chasing enemies down is still very useful for shooters. And finally, at number 1, we have the Corvus Hold, which is one of my favorite exotics and has been for quite a few years now. And especially after the fall of Starfire, it has sidled into the number 1 position yet again. And it's actually a very simple exotic that's only used for Void. Firstly, you resist incoming damage while charging your Void Grenade, which means you should be using the Charge Void Grenade thing, which can actually save your life from time to time. The Charge Void Grenades return around 40% of grenade energy whenever you get a hit. And as a personal recommendation, I recommend using Vortex Grenade because the cooldown between time that you can activate this perk is short enough that the first hit and the last hit of the Vortex can trigger its effect, allowing you to get 80% of your grenade from one grenade. If you get a kill with that grenade, you get Devour if you're using that aspect. Devour gives you grenade energy as well. So if you get 1 or 2 kills while having Devour with your grenade, you get your full grenade back. The thing that I think is so important with this exotic is that it doesn't require a kill to activate. You can get 80% of your grenade by hitting a boss with it. Top that off with using your class ability or getting 1 orb. You actually have your grenade back. You can also make this Vortex Grenade that sucks in all of its enemies a weakening grenade, which is also really powerful, especially if you want to use your super, toss out a weakening grenade, and then use your super, which does even more damage. So in essence, this exotic doesn't require a kill to activate. It handles crowd control very easily. It does good boss damage and helps for debuffing the boss in the thing, even though it is a tier 1 15% damage reduction or damage increase. And honestly, Void is one of the best options for Warlock for both PvP and PvE. So if you ever see the Corvus Hold or honestly any of these top 10 exotics at the Xur, I highly recommend you pick it up regardless of its distribution. And the last thing I want to say is that Promethean Spurt, an exotic that nobody used before this season, which was a bad exotic, got changed this season, which I consider to be a nerf, which I think is hilarious. This exotic got nerfed. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, a big thank you to Mom and Dad, Kipper Shaw, Waffar and Prez, Joe Baden, Robert Schreier, James Oster, Ethan Hodges, Monty Armstrong, Monday, Steve Buckner, Panther, Casey Reagan, William Peterson, and Benjamin for their support on Patreon. And that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name's Iconic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.